again.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. This is Neve. I'm here with Jen, and we're going to share from our hearts in Divine Feminine Flow. So whatever comes up about our amazing retreat experience, specifically Jen's experience. So thank you, Jen, for being here and being willing to share. It means so much. So thank you.
Yes. And as I mentioned to Neve before we started, this is my first live ever. So I'm very honored and happy to be sharing it in this moment with Neve, especially after our experience.
Yes, and anyone, if anyone is watching live, please give us a like or a comment. Let us know that you're here, and I'll keep track of that. If you have any specific questions, you could also post those. So what amazingness do you want to share first? What's on your heart?
Just like the reason I felt compelled to like jump on and do this with you is because of so many changes, but yet there's such subtle changes that it took me a while to digest kind of what happened while we were in the wilderness in Montana, having our divine feminine experience. So just the shifts that have happened for me personally.
Yeah, I am very curious what you feel like before, who you were before and who you are now. Like what is that transformation as you're digesting it?
So who I was before, and I retired in 2018, and I was very much in a masculine profession and lived in a masculine world. And I think the feminine expression, that part of me was not allowed to be, to exist in the place that I was. And I think I can't talk about like how I've changed unless I talk about kind of where I was in that place before. And when I left, I had so much pain in my body and so much physical heaviness, particularly in the left side of my body, which, as I learned later, wasn't just because I carried a weapon on that side of my body. It was because that's the feminine side of our bodies. We have the masculine side and the feminine side. And my feminine side was just very weighed down. And this experience and being with the particular women that we were with at this retreat opened up and like harmonized those two sides for me.
That is so huge. That is so huge. So how do you see that playing out? And I mean, I know you had actual physical transformation on the left side of your body. You want to share?
Yeah, I think part of the energetic, as I called our retreat, it was like mini shamanic experience, mini panchakarma retreat. It had so many elements, and I think a lot of those I've kind of known that I've wanted to experiment with those Ayurvedic treatments because I believe that they are the thing that helps the body kind of come back online and reconnect. And I think that going through that experience in the place that we did really helped me kind of like turn on that part of me. It's almost like there was a part of me that I couldn't even hear or listen to before. And now there's like a full body connection. So I'm actually connected to like the full body. I mean, I kind of texted you. I went to my first kirtan here in town on the other night. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a, kind of an expression of yoga. You go dance and sing mantras. And this is my first time doing one in a group where I walked in and I didn't know anybody when I got there. I went by myself. But just my whole body felt different in that type of experience than it had in the past. I've done bhakti yoga with my yoga teachers, but being there, I was sitting in a chair and I'm like, after the first couple of songs, I'm like, I can't sit in this chair anymore. Like, I have to get up. I'm like, get up. And this voice was saying, get up. So I went to the back of the class and was dancing and singing. And it just felt like such a different shift for me. Like I can feel I did put a tissue box nearby because I was like, oh, I might cry.
Beautiful. That's so neat. So do you think that the dancing that we did and then the divine feminine just really activated that in you? So
Yeah.
being there, you're like, yeah, I don't need to sit. I can move my body, like connect and feel in a different way.
Yes. While I was there, I mean, it kind of was regression. I almost felt like I was at, summer camp. I mean, that was kind of the feeling that we had was like, summer camp for grown ass women, basically. You get to go and just play and have fun and try all these new things out. And I just felt like there was a part of me that as we went through those different things, practicing yoga together today, getting up and having my morning chats with, my roomie and my coffee buddy, Wendy, and kind of having those connections that I hadn't had in quite a long time. I mean, not just retiring from my profession and kind of finding new friends, but also moving around. And then with the lockdowns and COVID and everything, haven't had those in person like connections with each other. So I think going there it just kind of unlocked, because I've been searching for the person who I was before I kind of went through the whole 20-year career. Like that person used to go out and have fun. She loved, riding horses and going to the beach and dancing and all of these things that, I hadn't done for so long. And so it was kind of cool to rediscover her again. And there were definitely some of the treatments that I received while I was there. I mean, I know you've posted about the heart fasting. Sharing that was like really groundbreaking for me. The activation that you and I did together, I think really helped with the integration that happened.
The Vesa quantum healing.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you, because I remember how lit up your face was after that. And you were like, I want to share about this. And I was like, great, let's share about it. Is there anything specifically about that healing that comes to mind or that's on your heart to share?
Yeah, it was basically, there was, the best way to describe it is there was kind of like a blockage, like everything in my left hip, which I'd been dealing with for so long. I've been going through physical therapy. I've had issues. I thought it kind of started about a decade ago from training too much for running. I was running half marathons and doing a lot of things to deal with stress. And I've done a lot of work to try to get that out. But it wasn't really that. I mean, all of the connections of what's happening in our body, we can look at through our mind and kind of figure out what's going on. So that whole process allowed me to really go into myself and kind of pay attention to what was connecting where. And it's almost like that. Now I'm just getting the jump of that little game that we used to play with the little light bright, was it called?
Yeah.
To plug in the light brights. I'm like, oh, it's like the light bright pieces in some places were missing. And it was like, we got to go, ding, let's turn that one on and let's turn this one on. And that's kind of what it felt like. And after it was over, it just felt like everything had connected back together. And to know what that feels like, it's not like you stay in that place. Or for me, I didn't stay in that place. It comes and goes, but I now know what it feels like to be in that place. And so when I'm kind of like an instrument, when you're out of tune, you just can kind of say, oh, wait, I need to pause and reconnect with what's going on here.
Yeah, that's beautiful and huge. It's like, okay, now that I know what it feels like to be harmonizing or integrated, I can go back there. But until you have that experience, it's elusive.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's huge. So you found since the retreat, it's easier to go back to harmony.
Yes.
In the body.
And a big part of that is nature. I mean, as we kind of all know, like your practices that you do every day, whatever those are, movement, meditation, self-care practices, but also just being, taking a walk or going to sit outside in nature. That's the quickest way for me to kind of reconnect with that way. But it's just like I learned, I was in fight or flight for so long, and studying and looking at all the different modalities that I have over the past 4 years, learning how to get that to shut off. It's the same thing. It's all part of the bigger piece, right? As we talked about the various layers of the body, um, and getting that to be able to go into the parasympathetic is very similar to this, like, because you can't feel that harmony and that connection when you're in the fight or flight, or it's very difficult. I can't do it.
Yeah. So you feel like your experience of the retreat has empowered and enabled you to recognize that sooner and then shift into a more relaxed state.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of these practices I've been doing on and off, for the last couple of years since I started studying, yoga and Ayurveda and these different things. But it wasn't until we actually kind of got disconnected from everything else and kind of put in a place where you're like, this is all you're going to get to focus on. You have the ability to just kind of shut everything else out and say, this is what I'm going to focus on for the next week. And then really tuning into it and being around a whole group of people who are all doing the same thing, are on their own journey in a similar way, and sharing those experiences. And now I come back and it's not like I have to do these practices. It's I'm able to, I can do these practices.
Okay.
Because I know what they do for me.
Yeah. So do you feel like there was a shift from like the self-care to-do list to making it sacred and doing it for yourself? And like, there's this deeper divine feminine energy that's been activated in your self-care?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Huge.
Yeah. It's more of the, kind of like what it brings to me. And it's not about the end result, really, because that comes. It's more about the process and the being in the now moment, and kind of like what you put into it at that moment and what you're gifting to yourself.
Yeah. I mean, totally changes the experience going from like a habit or something that you feel like you need to do to something that's sacred and that's calling to you, like a ritual is calling to you. Right. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wake up at 5:55 a.m. and it's like, oh, it's time to go gargle with your coconut oil. I'm like, ooh, that's right.
That's so funny that you said that. I woke up exactly 5:55 this morning. Synchronicities. Yep. There were so many synchronicities. So synchronicities, I believe it's an affirmation that we're in the divine flow. And I felt like that retreat was like the whole thing was synchronistic. Did you feel that as well?
Yes. I mean, me, when we were preparing for it and everybody's kind of asking, well, we're going to do this, what are we going to do? I was just like, I just want to show up, and whatever happens is going to happen. And that's taken me a long time to get to this place of surrender and just saying, hey, I'm just going to show up. I was an extremely type A person who's like, I have to plan it out. I have to know exactly what time. And I'm like, no, hey, I'm going to get dropped off in Bozeman, Montana and take a shuttle 3 hours into the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, it wasn't like I'd never met you before, but it's kind of one of those things if you have to just go completely on faith. And I think because I was just so open to that, I got a lot out of this. I was just open to whatever came up.
Yeah, beautiful. So well, I guess I'm curious, like what aspect of leadership do you feel like you've grown in? Like, how have you evolved as a leader? Because obviously, this integration, the things you've shared are great for you and as a leader, but specifically when you think about, because you are a leader, you've been a leader, and you're going to continue on this path of serving others. So how do you feel like the retreat has added and amplified that?
I've always felt called to go back into my community of women in law enforcement, and I've been doing it kind of in a as they come to me basis. But after this experience and kind of how I feel about the techniques and the things that I've learned, that I feel like there's some way that I would like to give back to my community further, along that line of things. And I'm kind of trying to really stay open to what it is, because I've tried starting things in the past and they just haven't worked out the way they have. So I'm going with I've made like drawings and ideas of what is on the path for me.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of trying to stay open. I have in the back of my mind of starting retreats or yoga classes locally for people who, like, say, are in first responder law enforcement positions but don't feel comfortable in going into a yoga class because they have no experience, no background in it. Because I think that's a good entry point. As we kind of all know, that's like an entry point to learn all of these other things that I've learned. Because I mean, I couldn't have started where I am now without things. But I definitely feel more comfortable and more comfortable talking about kind of the experiences that I've been through, and being open to be available to people who might want to talk to me about it if they're in kind of the same position, and you know don't know what they might be able to do to change the way they feel. I mean, I felt tired and lethargic, and a lot of the time just spent everything on the mission and what I was doing without realizing that um, I could do both. And I think there's a way to have you're better able to serve other people if your own cup is full. I mean, we talk about that all the time, of right, giving from your overflow. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah, and I'm all about nurturing the leaders. I don't know if you could tell.
yes, yes.
So,
And I feel like that's kind of my thing has been in the past too, is like finding, mentoring, and developing women who want to, and I've mentored men too as well. It's finding people who want to find that spark within themselves, and that was the word that kind of came to me when I was out the other day. I'm like, what is it I'm actually wanting to do? And it's like to relight your spark, basically. It's like you feel like your spark gets dampened and dull, and especially the longer you're in a certain position, career, field, it weighs down on you. So I definitely feel called to do that, and I'm just going to kind of be open to the opportunities that come up for that.
yeah, beautiful. So what I heard is that the divine feminine activation and initiation that you went through is like inspired your leadership and also the surrender of the flow. Like you don't have to figure it out. You can be you and keep going in the flow and it will come to you, whatever it is. So like another layer of surrender and trust is kind of what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I needed too, because I kept trying to do things, and sometimes we have an idea of what it's supposed to be, but it's not really the way it's going to turn out.
Oh yeah. That's the story of my week this week. So yeah, totally. Um, so what was one of your favorite moments from the retreat?
Oh man, there were so many. I have to say, getting in the creek was really cool. I mean,
That
I did it
creek
more than
is
once, yeah,
magical.
but
Yeah.
it was magical, and I loved tending the fires as much as I was able to do that. And I mean, I got kind of teased because I said, "Oh, I want more outdoor fires," and some people online were like, "What? More outdoor fires?" I'm like, "No, no, no, controlled, like managed, like
Right.
outdoor fire," because that brings us to a different space when you sit around a campfire or an outdoor fire space. There's
Hmm.
something so primal and like connected to yourself, to nature, to the other people that you're with when you do that. And so the fact that we, like, everything we did there, the sauna needed a fire, the hot tub needed a fire. I mean, it was so cool. The yoga room needed a fire to be able to do that. So
I know that was a fun part of the retreat that I didn't quite realize. Like I knew it was kind of rustic and that we needed to tap into that primal, like build a fire. But I did the fire for the hot tub 2 days. And like every time between like meals and practices, I was going down and tending it. And there's something so activating about creating the fire and keeping it tended and then gathering with other people around it. So yeah, that's really
yeah.
amazing. What about as far as, I mean, you said the heart Basti treatment was powerful for you. They were
Mhm.
all very activating. So was that your favorite one or?
I don't know if that was necessarily my favorite one. I really like the reflexology, learning the reflexology, because that's something simple that you can even do for yourself if you if you want to, and that it's easy to bring to other people in your life. So I think that's something that I'll keep with me, as well. And then having a yoga practice where you come together every morning in a set place and time with the same group of people is also really nice when you do retreats like this. It's something that even when you go to a yoga class in your local town, it's just not the same as, you know, being in a space away from it all, and nobody's going to come knock on the door or interrupt you or anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there were so many little gems. I mean, our dance party night, and you know
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of special moments. Yeah, it's interesting. Like it was so divine, and the flow was amazing. And it was interesting talking to Lainey afterwards, like how to evolve it. Like, how are we going to evolve it for next summer? And there's not a lot of changes that we really want to make because it flowed so beautifully. And I don't know if you're willing to share about your little wobble, but that was really amazing to witness. It was really amazing to witness you just seeing a pattern, and within the hour
oh yeah,
acknowledging it
yeah,
and shifting it. It was so powerful.
yeah. I think part of the process of this is like learning your patterns to how you react to certain things. And for me, as I've kind of learned a lot of, because of the place I was in, of how having to be so rigid, how I react to things is like immediately going to, anger or control or kind of a management type of place. And when you're doing that in such a place that's so out of like your normal world, you can really see it. You can be like, whoa, because that's your pattern, that's your go-to habit. And it's worked for you if you've been doing it years and years and you're still, being successful. But when you start to see it as you kind of watch yourself reacting and see how, and especially in an environment, I think particularly in the environment we were in, where everybody else was kind of aware of what they were doing in their own spaces and not letting things knock them out of their place, that causes it to kind of bounce back on you. So it reverberates a little bit more, and I think you can see it more clearly. And so it's really allowed me to see like, oh, hey, what is my first reaction going to be when to take the pause, and just kind of say, well, what do we really need to do here? Do I need to do anything right away? Or can I just sit with it for a minute and see what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's beautiful. So do you feel like since the retreat, you've been able to witness yourself more, like your awareness has expanded to a place where there is more space and there's more of that witness, like, oh.
Yes. And I think when you go back, when you do reentry, I mean, we all kind of talked about like, oh, when we re-enter the world, like, what's it going to be like? And it's very different when you come back in and you're around people who aren't on this sort of path or on a different part of the path, that you have to be more observant of what you say and how you react to people, and how far you go into certain things. Because I've had conversations since then where I'm like, I'm just going to let that be there and not have to pick it up or have to respond to it. So I think I've learned how to just let things, because I came from an environment where you always had to deal with and manage everything. Everything was a 5-alarm fire, and you always had to deal with it and manage it right away. Like, it was very rare that you could just kind of say, well, let's put that on the back burner. You could, and I realize now I don't need to treat things like that. And I don't need to deal with things like that. Pretty much, there's very few things in my life right now that are like a 5-alarm fire. Let's say, knock on some wood, because now I might get one. But I think I know that I would deal with it differently now than I have in the past, because if it's something that's meant to happen, it's just going to happen. And you have to, manage it as you go, be open to it and surrender to it as it comes up to you and the opportunities present themselves. It all happens for a reason.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing like there's a deeper sense of self-trust from the
Yeah.
retreat. Like you
Yeah.
trust
Yeah.
yourself.
As you know, one of my intentions was to like be able to listen to my own intuition better. I think I spent a lot of years like not, kind of, there's certain things you do at a gut instinct, but I needed to be able to hear that more clearly for myself. And that's definitely happened. And there's definitely a stepping into listening to that and connecting with that before I react to something. Respond, not react, as one of my friends says.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Just have to receive that for a moment. That's so huge. I'm so happy to hear it. It's a game changer, because then if you can be in that place, right, you can pick up more on the divine flow of where things are going or where you're meant to be in the moment versus in the mind and spinning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I lived a lot in my head. I mean, a lot of my, life was lived mentally up here and processing things and not in the physical body. I think a lot of us kind of disconnect from that, numb out from that. And I know I was definitely doing that through a good portion of the end of my working life, because it becomes so difficult to even deal with that because of everything that was going on. So to be able to like kind of get in there and reconnect again and process things in a different way has really truly been a gift, like from this work and ultimately from being on this retreat.
Yeah. So do you feel like another transformation is just more body awareness in the moment? Is that, yeah.
Yeah. It's more connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause the way that we set it up with the practices and everything, it was so much embodied. It was so much going back to the body and the breath, which, takes us out of the head. Of course, like that's the koshas.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then finally being able to kind of get into that, the bliss body where you're just kind of like nothing around you can really bring you down when you're in that place. You're just kind of, so connected and so happy and so joyful that, you just, it's just I don't even know. I don't think there's anything to like how to say. It's just,
yeah, it's
like,
a hard thing to explain, but it's like the things in life kind of bounce off because you're in this kind of sattvic bliss state. And so it's like, oh, that's happening. Boing. It just bounces
like,
off.
okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll just, so yeah, it is hard to, I mean, it's one of those things of like, you have to feel it to know it. I don't, and then there's the practice of like going in and going out, kind of getting yourself back there. And, here I'm doing the little infinity, because it's basically like the in and the out of it.
Yeah. Beautiful. So I think that we shared a lot of amazing things. Is there anything else that was on your heart that you wanted to share, or any other stories or shout outs?
I want to shout out to everybody. I mean, it's like everybody there had such their own unique and special, and we had unique and special connections. I mean, my roomie was awesome. Soko was just like, she brought so much joy and laughter and fun to my experience there that it was really great. And I mean, but everybody was so different, but yet so similar. And that's the thing when you go on these retreats, you kind of discover you're not alone in what you're going through. So
yeah, that's such a great way to close. It's so powerful because we think, we get into this little box and we think like, oh, no one else doesn't feel worthy, or no one else falls into their patterns, or no one else whatever. And it's like, oh wait, we're all human, we're all spiritual, but we're all human having this physical experience, and we're actually way more similar than we are different.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a pretty great reminder of that. Because I think there's two, I don't know if you can speak to this as well, but that progression over the week, it's like at the beginning, you're like, oh, this person's different in this way, and this person's different this way. And then as the retreat goes on, right, as the time starts to bend and shift, it's like, oh, we're the same in this way. We're the same in this way. We're the same in this way.
Yes.
Did you feel that as well?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and there was the difference between those of us who are on the over 50 part of our lives and those of us who aren't. Like, but then you start to see, you're like, hey, it's different. And they're like, no, we've had those experiences and you're able to share. And I loved the sharing that went back and forth between the younger and the older generations of what was happening there, because there's so much life experience. And when you get to the point where you have that life experience, you want to share it with people and be like, hey, you can take it for whatever it's worth. You don't have to use it. You hear what you need to hear, but you want to be able to share that with people because that's your gift to give back.
It really is. And I love that you brought that in, because I think that that is something that's super missing in our culture, is hanging out in communities with especially women of different ages, because there's so much beautiful exchange and transmission that happens from young people inspiring and giving more energy to the wisdom of people that are more seasoned. Like, it's just, I can't even put it into words because I think it's so valuable. I mean, it's life-changing to be able to have women of all different ages in your life in a close relationship,
Mhm.
in an open, like, yes, open-hearted, open-minded space, and be able to share like that. There were so many moments in between, yoga and the treatments and all the divine feminine activations and quantum healing, the Egyptian healing circle. I would love if you wanted to share your experience of that or anything that you took away from that, because that was powerful.
It was one of those experiences I can't even really describe it. I didn't really describe it much that evening. I was and that was something I kind of learned. It's like sometimes you have these experiences and you're just like, I can't even really share them in a way that
Does them justice.
that
I
that
know.
right, that does them justice, exactly. And I'm just like, because Soko asked me later, she goes, you didn't really say much about what you felt and what you went through. And I was like, well, it was so much that, like, the energy of, and having been in yoga, it's like, that energy of when you connect, but that was it times 1,000. And I think it was the connections, doing it at the end where we'd all been connected together for that period of time,
Yeah.
and been able to show each other our true selves, and you kind of knew who you were, so there weren't any barriers or fears about, like, being seen for who you were. And I think that was why that whole experience was so powerful for everybody.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up, and that's definitely something that in the future we'll do towards the end, because it is, I think, amplified with that vulnerability that's accessible after a few days. What did you throw into the fire, if you want to share, on that journey we threw
Oh,
into the fire? Because I was talking to a couple different ladies that were on retreat, and it's like, whatever we threw into the fire, that shit got burned. Like, there
yeah.
was like a huge transformation with that. And you don't have to share if you don't want to, but
No, mine was basically my old habits of how I viewed, myself and who I was, and that person, that rigid person. That was a version of that. And like, the fact that I think really, because what's totally changed for me, and because it was that view of everything having to be a certain way. It's like, yeah, the black and white, I mean, even though I know that's not the way things are, but it's just kind of like throwing that away and just saying, you know, being able to be more joyful and more happy and playing and having fun. Like, that stuff that's what's come in since I've come back from that.
Yeah, that really is a divine feminine activation, when you can shift from the patriarchal, dualistic society norms of black and white. Like the divine feminine is circular, it's gray, it's flowing, it's not rigid. And so that's what I hear in your share is like, yeah, the divine feminine was activated within me on so many levels.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just excited to see what's to come. It's just because it's just each day brings something new, and you look at it through a different lens, a different perspective. I think that's, for me, it's been like a total shift of perspective and how I intake information.
Wow. Can you expand on that at all? Or is that because like that's huge? So it comes in and you reorganize.
It's like, the masculine is the container, right? And the feminine is kind of like what flows inside of it. And for so long, I've like worried about creating the container and creating, that. And now it's like, okay, once the container is created, then you can just kind of let that shit go and be in the space. And so I think for myself, it's been like, okay, when I show up someplace and I know, okay, this is where I'm going to be, and this is what I'm like 100% in it, whether it's like going to a Keratin downtown or going to my golf class, and taking my golf lesson. Because that's a very embodied thing. Like if you're not in your body, you can't do some of these things. But it's a whole different experience. So yeah, I think if that makes any sense, that's kind of.
Yeah. Well, I'll reflect back what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, so from going to a yoga class or going to a kirtan or just going golfing or walking has all shifted into, it has a filter of divine feminine now, where you're more embodied and present and in the flow and aware of old patterns when they arise, and you can step away from them.
Yes.
Was that
yes.
good?
I love that. Yes, that's perfect. That's perfect. Couldn't have said it. You did a very good job.
Jenn, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing from your heart. And yeah, it is amazing. And for me to be able to co-lead and facilitate this really was affirming in my divine feminine leadership of leaders. Like, it was so amazing to watch you give a massage, to watch you step into the role as the healer, because that's what, Lainey and I were doing. We're empowering you all to trust your intuition and to trust your energy and to trust that it was powerful, and to see you step into that, like in every day in the moment, it was like, gave me chills. I was like, oh yes, oh goddess, go.
Yes, that was for me too a big part of being able to see everybody, like who they were and how they changed over the period of time that we were there, and how they stepped into a bigger, more feminine version of themselves, more powerful version of themselves, because everybody did over the course of it, even you and Lainey. I mean,
yes.
Yeah. And that's why I think your next one is going to be even better, greater, bigger. Not I'll say better, but it'll evolve, and it'll be exactly what it needs to be for the people that are there at the time. I mean, I think that's what you guys do. You create a container that takes in all of the humans that are there in that space, and
and then zaps them and brings out their soul.
Right, basically. And allows them for the space to grow and level up. I mean, that's basically what it was. It was a huge leveling up for everybody, no matter where you were. Everybody was at different places and spaces, but I don't think you can come out of it not leveling up in some way.
Yeah, so you felt very nurtured and held in that space.
And seen. And I think that was part of it from everybody, not just you and Lainey, but everybody was there, including Margot. We had these beautiful meals from somebody who spent, I have to give another shout out to Margot, because if we didn't have the food and the nurturing and the sustenance that we had, we couldn't have done all the amazing work that we did, So, but I mean, that being in that space where you have the ability to be seen and be heard and connect with people, connect with other humans, it's like what we need every day. Can't we just live that way?
Yeah, yeah, it was very powerful just to be able to have no distractions and to be able to be present with the real essence of each person there
Yeah.
day in and
Yeah.
day out. So thank
Yeah.
you so
Yeah.
much.
Everyday life has so much distraction.
It does. It really does. And it is a practice. It's that the flow and the catching ourselves when we're not present and being
Mhm.
like, oh, you can come back to that moment. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all the circle, right? It's the circle. You go through the circle and,
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yep.
yeah, sometimes it's a little egg shaped. You miss a few things, but
Yeah. And it's fine because it will come back around and it will land when it's meant to land. So yeah, thank you again. Like isn't it fun to anchor that experience? Like it's so nice to share and talk about it, especially a few weeks after. It's like, oh yeah, that was pretty huge. Because we forget. We're humans, right? We forget.
yes.
So thank you for anchoring the experience for yourself and me and anyone else that was there and sharing from your heart. It really means a lot. So thank you. I know.
You're welcome.
Glad we got to give each other hugs every day because I just want to hug. Like,
I know I missed that part of it.
we'll hug again. I'm not worried.
I'm not either. I know it'll happen.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.